Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Cooking from Quarantine. Today we're going to be making poached shrimp in a yogurt dill cucumber sauce. So this recipe, which I've never cooked before, we're learning together as we go. This recipe comes out of one of my favorite cookbooks, The Young Man in the Sea, which is from Chef Dave Pasternak, who owns Eska restaurant in Midtown and a few other restaurants in the area. This guy knows like everything there is to know about seafood and cooking fish and what the hell to do with it. So he's got this great cookbook that I was flipping through the other night because I have a pound of shrimp that I need to cook and be done with. And I saw that there's this recipe for poached sturgeon with cucumbers, dill, and mascarpone. And sturgeon, I know, is like a more solid fish, and so I was like, maybe I could mix shrimp with that instead of sturgeon, and mascarpone, like, could I maybe swap out Greek yogurt? So I texted Chef Dave, I asked him my questions, he said absolutely, and gave me a little advice as to when to pluck the shrimp out of the oil. We are poaching this in olive oil. So we're gonna kind of learn as we go here today, but I'll take you through what we need and what I'm swapping out for just the ingredients I happen to have in the house. So we have a pound of shrimp. If you wanted to make this recipe according to the book, you would be using 4 6-ounce sturgeon fillets, so okay. But I'm using shrimp. I'm using 1 pound of shrimp that I've already peeled. I saved the peels for a seafood stock I'm going to make later, but these are our cleaned and peeled shrimp. They all still have their little tails on, though. It's much more flavorful to cook shrimp that way. And I've actually found, and I don't know if this is like true and known or if it's just something like anecdotally I've noticed, that the shrimp don't cook as quickly when they have a tail on. I don't know, so it's easier to not overcook them. You need 2 cucumbers, which I have grated, salted, and put into a colander so that they can start draining. And cucumbers have a lot of water, so make sure it's drained. We're going to be using, I had this kind of Greek yogurt in the house, this Faye stuff. Chef Dave says 1 cup of mascarpone, so use what you have. Lots and lots of olive oil. We're going to be using like 10 cups of olive oil to poach these suckers. Why? Because it tastes good. That's why. The recipe calls for 1 dried arbol chili. I don't have any of that in the house. I have jarred Calabrian peppers from Italy. Most of Chef Dave's cooking is Italian. I figure like this is good enough. We're only using it to flavor the oil, so I feel like it's not that big a deal if we mess around with it a little. We have dill, which is going to go with our cucumbers and our yogurt. We have rosemary, which is going to further season the oil. Ordinarily, you'd use a clove of garlic. I happen to be all out of garlic suddenly, so like we're not putting garlic in this. Nowhere in the recipe does it call for any bay leaves, but if you've watched my show before, you know like I heart bay leaves. And I got from Baldor Foods, this is really something special. I've never even like seen these in a grocery store. These are fresh bay leaves instead of dried bay leaves. They smell so yummy. They actually smell like tea. Like I would make a tea out of these. They smell so good. So I'm going to use these to help season the oil as well, because anything that we put into our oil that we poach in, it's like infusing the food with those flavors. And the recipe also calls for a tablespoon of pink peppercorns. I don't have pink peppercorns. I don't know where you get pink peppercorns. Like better grocery stores than what I have down the block from me. And if I were to order them from Baldor Foods, I'd probably have to order like 20 pounds of them. So I don't have any pink peppercorns in the house, but I am going to use, what the pink peppercorn thing indicates to me is that you're using something that's like a softer pepper. So I have white pepper in the house. I'm going to use that. And if Chef Dave doesn't like it, like, Sorry, brah. Okay, so we have everything kind of ready and prepped. We're going to heat 10 cups of olive oil in a large Dutch oven on our stove, only to a simmer, not to an insane boil. I know this sounds like a lot of olive oil, but since we're only poaching in it, the temperature doesn't get terribly high, and so you can actually reuse it to fry things in, etc. This is a totally reusable oil dish, so it's very sustainable, which is lovely. So I will meet you over at the stove to start poaching up our shrimp. So we have filled our Dutch oven with roughly 10 cups of olive oil, and then I threw in 2 bay leaves, 2 sprigs of rosemary, and 2 of the chilies because mine were, I believe, sweeter than what the recipe called for. The recipe called for chilies that were a little more spicy than what I'm using. So I'm using 2 just to make sure we have the right amount of spice. And so what we're waiting for is for our oil to come to temperature, to heat up and to a low simmer. So we don't want this like crazy frying thing happening. We just want a low simmer going. I am using this tool in order to lower my shrimp into the oil and take it back out. This is called a spider. If you don't have one of these, a slotted spoon is totally fine. I stole this from my mother's house and I'm never giving it back. I love this tool. I use it a lot. It's great for scooping out pasta, etc. So I'm not sure when to call this simmering. I will say that the oil is rippling, which is a good sign. Again, I've never made this recipe before, and actually, come to think of it, I don't know if I've ever poached fish in olive oil before. I think I've only ever poached it, regularly. Okay. Well, it is starting to make little crackly sounds. I'm starting to smell the rosemary, so, something's happening in here, and we have teeny tiny bubbles that are starting to work their way to the surface of the pot. But, I'm reluctant to put the fish in yet because that's going to cool down our pot. But I guess this doesn't have to be terribly hot. So, you know what? Let's take 2 shrimp on here and drop them in and see what happens, because sometimes you only learn by going. Okay. So I put those 2 shrimp in. I'm definitely hearing some snap, crackle, pops happening. And we're going to be taking the shrimp back out when they turn kind of a whitey pink color, just when they just start to turn. That's when you take them out. So let's drop 2 more in. I don't want to crowd the pot. I mean, I suppose this is a simmer sound. So these are the first 2 we had dropped in, and you see they are starting to turn pink. Well, now it's really starting to bubble, so let's turn our heat down. Because we want it to stay simmering, not, a furious boil. It also becomes kind of dangerous once oil starts boiling too much. So let's get our plate out so that we have some place to put our cooked shrimp. Because if there's anything I know about cooking fish, it's that when you look at it and you go, I think maybe it's done, it means it's done. It actually means it was probably done a few seconds before. These shrimp are pretty gorgeous, I gotta tell you. If that's all it takes to cook them, this was so quick. See, nice bright pink shrimp. Okay, let's drop in the rest of these suckers. I'm doing about 6 at a time. Just because I don't want to cool down the oil too much. this is really fascinating. And so look at how gorgeous, I mean, these shrimp are definitely cooked. They're so beautifully pink and hot. And again, like, I'm reluctant to mess with them too much, but I do want to keep an eye on the color that they're turning. It smells really good, I could tell you that. I do kind of wish I'd had a clove of garlic like the recipe calls for, but, you know, we can only do what we can do in quarantine times. We only have what's in the house. Okay, again, like, normally I would let them cook a little bit longer than this, but with shrimp, like, just pluck them out. As soon as they turn color, just grab them. They're cooked. They're cooked! Sometimes you just have to trust the fish, you know? It's kind of like cooking eggs. Here, wait, we lost some rosemary. Go back in, buddy. Some really beautiful stuff. Okay, and we'll throw in our last batch of fishies. What a quick recipe. I mean, I understand that, you know, this was supposed to be for poached sturgeon, and so that probably would have taken longer because those are fillets that you're waiting to cook, and again, you don't want to crowd the pans, so like that would have taken maybe a few minutes per fillet, as opposed to like what's happening here, which is like a few seconds per shrimp. They smell terrific, and they're going to have that terrific sauce that we're pairing with it. So as soon as these guys come out of the oil, we will be assembling all of it together, all of our little light, lovely flavors. This is such a light dish. I know that we're poaching in olive oil, which sounds really heavy, but the truth is, like, we haven't even used salt in this. Like, these flavors are very gentle, delicate, balanced. Perfect for like a lunch. I don't love serving fish at dinner parties because people, I think, eat fish like too quickly. 3 bites of fish and you're kind of done. But for a lunch, I think this is really perfect food. Okay, so that's all of our shrimp, and we're going to now turn off the heat. Make sure I didn't forget anybody. I did not. Turn off the heat, let the oil shut up. I'm gonna put a cover on this just so that it quiets down a little. And you know what? I should probably move it off the burner entirely. Just be very, very careful when you're moving things with bubbling oil in it. So we're going to take our shrimp, which are gorgeous, back to the counter, and we will assemble the sauce for them. So we're back at the counter. We have our beautifully olive oil poached shrimp. And what's next in our recipe is that we are going to mix together our dill, our yogurt, and our cucumber. So luckily, we've been draining our cucumber for like the better part of an hour. We've already salted the cucumber because that helps to draw out the moisture. Let's clean this sucker out. Okay, so we're putting all of the cucumber into our bowl. And then we're using a cup of what's supposed to be mascarpone, but we're using Greek yogurt, which is just fine. This is 2% Greek yogurt. I'm gonna try not to get the kind of water that's in the yogurt in here because I don't want this to become watery. I love the smell of cucumber and yogurt. It's so like fresh smelling. We're supposed to be using pink peppercorns. We don't have pink peppercorns. Well, what are you gonna do? I'll tell you what we're gonna do. We're gonna mix in a little bit of white powder, not white powder, White powder. We're gonna mix a little bit of cocaine into our shrimp dish. It's totally fine. Chef Dave approved. No, we're going to be using white pepper, which I don't know, is just a flavor that I like better than black pepper. And then we're going to be using a 1/4 cup of chopped dill. Now, I think chopping dill is like a commonplace fool's errand, and so we're going to do this by hand, because we aren't restaurant cooks, are we? No, and things should still look good and taste good and all of that, but like, trust me, this is gonna look beautiful, and we don't really need to like dirty one more surface. This is our home. We don't have anybody coming and cleaning up after us, or even if you were, not during Corona times, you don't. So mixing this up together, and we're just going to place kind of a dollop of it right on top, and then taste what we've come up with. So here is our sauce. Let's take a shrimp that we've poached in oil, drag it through. Wow. Oh my god, it's really good. The creaminess of the yogurt goes so well with the shrimp, which is poached in those really light olive oil flavors. Very Greek tasting dish between the dill and the cucumber, the mixture of the olive oil and the Greek yogurt. This is like a knockout shrimp dish. Really good. Saving the tails for stock. These are all of my shells. These are my tails. Saving it all. I'm gonna throw it back in. Make something beautiful with it. This is delicious, sophisticated, but easy. So this is one of those dishes that, it's really good. If I were to serve this to people, like, it looks beautiful. The flavors are really grown up and delightful and subtle. And I mean, we did this in real time. This took like less than 5 minutes to do, and it's done and it's perfect. So thank you very much. Thank you to Chef Dave Pasternak for the kick-ass recipe that was supposed to be poached sturgeon, but is now poached shrimp. I love it. I'll be cooking it again, and I'll see you next time on Cooking from Quarantine.